So we've all heard of crazy landlords. What about crazy tenants? My aunt and uncle bought a new family home in a different state, but kept their former house to use as a rental property. They ended up renting it to a family who had gotten out of New Orleans post-Katrina. About a year and a half later, they called me to say that the tenants had moved out, and they would pay me, my brother and the guy I was dating at the time $50 apiece to go through and do a deep clean of the house to get it ready for new renters. We were broke and barely out of high school at the time, so we said sure. Turned out that the tenants had had multiple families living there with them. House was completely trashed. Nothing had been swept or wiped down in a very long time, so every surface had a sticky crust of grime built up. There were dirty diapers and other trash piled up in the corners of the living room and dining area. In the kitchen, there were spills on the floor that had never been wiped up. Someone had just placed newspapers over them which had dried in place. One of them had a dried up broken egg underneath. The fridge was crammed full of rotted and moldy food. There was a floor-to-room at the back of the house with terracotta floors that were now completely black. The only thing I found that would get the patina off the tile was scrubbing each one individually with a magic eraser. I could keep going, but you get the idea. It was bad. We filled multiple dumpsters with the trash we pulled out of that place. $50 a piece was not worth it. Did your aunt know it was that bad, or send you in blind? I had a tenant leave behind around 60 unopened 30-pound bags of dry dog food behind after moving out once. She didn't own a dog. I'll never know why she had it or why she left it, but the animal shelter was really happy about it. Probably trying a web arbitrage scheme that didn't work out. TLDR, you run a price tracking app to know when random stuff is super cheap on Amazon or whatever, buy it and sell it a month or two later when the price jumps back up again. Sounds like DNP trading. Oh. See, my immediate thought was like keeping people in the basement and feeding them dog food. You think better of people than I do. I was a tenant in an apartment building with security doors. Another tenant on the floor below me started putting up security cameras in the hallway that everyone had to walk through to get to their apartment. I called up the landlady because it made me uncomfortable having some random guy know my comings and goings. It turned out that the guy who originally leased the place had sublet it against his lease agreement. There were more than a few calls to the police about really shady and drunk/strung out people inside the building, and it was because these people were, as the police had dubbed them, professional squatters who kept letting random people in to hang out with them. Eventually they were successfully evicted, and while removing what little crap they had in there, the original tenant came back. I was in my room just getting ready to sit down and relax when I heard a gun go off. I called the police and went to chill with my neighbor who I knew had a gun. From what I gathered after the fact, the original tenant had come in with a gun for some reason, accidentally shot it at the ground and then fled before the cops showed up. That was a pretty weird night. I called the police and went to chill with my neighbor who I knew had a gun. Hey neighborino, I brought some beer and chips, let's play some cards. BTW, you've got a gun, right? A neighbor saw her moving her shit out in the middle of the night after being a month late on rent. Met her at the apartment the next day and she had a little roller suitcase of her shit in it and threw my spouse the keys and $200 saying that's all she had for rent and she was leaving. Left old couch, busted old tube TV, trash, clothes in the condo and just left. The place was trashed inside, burned the carpet from cigs, just black trail from door to door, reeked like weed, and despite Elise saying no smoking, you could tell her favorite spot to smoke on the couch as the ceiling was black above it. Nailed the curtains into the wall. Broke the bathtub, took light fixtures. Had to gut it and repaint from top to bottom. The best was she said we should consider ourselves lucky as she didn't have to pay any rent due to COVID, and when confronted on what she thought the CERB benefit from the government was for, she lashed out that it was for her to live life and enjoy. She was a 43-year-old hag who didn't understand contract. I always wonder, are there warning signs? Obviously these people have crap credit and no references, right? But you rent to them anyways? I had a tenant in a rental house that was nice, quiet retired guy. Drank a bit, but kept the place clean, paid his rent on time, and was nice to the neighbors. A couple years in violation of our rental agreement, he lets his younger brother and his brother's lady friend move in. Well, they were meth heads, and got the old guy hooked on meth, too. It went rapidly downhill. They became obsessed with the notion that the government was spying on them using drones. So they'd get high as kites, arm themselves with shotguns and chainsaws, and go shoot at drones and tear down drone nests. They destroy the barn, nest of drones in the hayloft, cut down several old, beautiful trees, again, drone nests, and shot/dissected a deer, in order to determine if it was actually a robot. They started terrorizing the neighbors at night with spotlights and shotguns, babbling incoherently about drones and mind control. That's when the police got involved. Because of the way the state's laws were structured, it took me 3 months to actually get them out of the house. By then, they'd done roughly $12,000 damage to the house itself. I have a brother who's a handyman, so that estimate is at the family rate. The kicker is that on their way out the door, they stuffed insulation into all the heat vents, dropped several, highly combustible, bug bombs into the gas furnace intake, and cranked the thermostat all the way up. After months of court, we reached a settlement only because the guy's 90-ish-year-old mother barged into the courtroom and cut me a check. Judge told me to take it and count my lucky stars that they didn't blow the place up. I was the tenant and lived in an apartment on the end of the building. The apartment to the right of my apartment was rented to a woman and her feral teenage son. She worked days, leaving at 6 a.m. and getting home at 4:30 p.m. The kid never stayed there at night and seemed to purposely try to not come home until she left in the morning. He never used the front door or even had a key as far as I could tell. He came and went through his bedroom window. He crawled out onto the HVAC unit and jumped to the ground. Without fail, he came in the apartment around 7 a.m. and immediately cranked death metal at concert volume. The day of the week was unimportant. Sunday or Saturday mornings when we were trying to sleep and were sane. If his mom wasn't there, it was the same story. I complained to the landlord. I complained to his mom. I called the cops. Nothing helped. He was predictable. He would play music until 10 a.m. or so, eat, then sleep until early evening when his mom got home. Then they would yell at each other for an hour until he slipped out of his bedroom window. Not necessarily crazy, but a previous tenant I had was afraid to contact me for basic stuff. I think they probably wanted to keep as low a profile as possible. Anyway, got a call saying that lights in parts of the duplex weren't working. I thought, oh, has to be a breaker tripped, so I told them I would take a look. Well, get over there and sure enough, breaker is tripped. Funny part was that once I tripped the breaker, no power still. So I asked questions, is there any electrical problems that you have noticed? Well, turns out they forgot to mention the smoking outlet in one of their bedrooms. Long story short, existing outlet, on the tripped circuit, was black and mangled, and to the point it burned through the copper wiring. Folks, tell your landlord when smoke is coming out of your wall. We won't get mad, we will get it fixed. Like seriously. I worked as a handyman for a rental management company. I saw more than a few things that were fun. One place, the guy had 46 cats staying in the unit with him. You cannot imagine how bad that place smelled. To be honest, the craziest stuff I saw were the things that the tenants just thought was normal. One place had 3 bedrooms and 1 bath. The bathroom faucet barely worked, to the point where one of the guys living there brushed his teeth in the bathtub. I was there to fix something else, but I took the liberty of picking up the replacement part at the local hardware store, less than $3, and replacing the broken piece, less than 2-minute job. Was persuaded to rent to a quiet young lady who had a support dog for her social anxiety and a carer who would visit a couple of times a week. This young lady was on benefits and the rent money was to be paid to her first before her sending it on to me. The letting agency swore blind she was a lovely lady and likely to be a good tenant for many years. The reality was an argumentative alcoholic with an untrained shitting canine monster and a very shouty equally alcoholic lesbian lover. I would get phone calls from neighbors telling me that my 2 pissed tenants were rolling around in the road outside the house having a drunken brawl in the middle of the night. Inevitably the benefit money got drunk instead of paid and I had to evict. I found the carpets outside in the shed covered in dog shit. The dog had chewed all the radiators, there were numerous big buckets of dog shit in the garden, curtains were missing, it was horrible. At least the shit-stained carpets were outside. I've never heard of housing aid going to the recipient, not the landlord. Sounds poorly run.